For more than 100 centuries, humanity survives by its fingertips for survival by their only leader, the God Emperor. A carrion lord that guides humanity from his golden throne that only survives by the deaths of 1,000 souls every day. Their blood is drunk and their flesh is eaten. The blood and flesh of humanity, the stuff of which the Imperium was made. To be a man in such times is to be amongst untold billions. It is to live in the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable. For this is a dark and terrible era, where you will find little comfort or hope. Forget about the progress of technology, science, and common humanity, for there is no peace among the stars, only an eternity of carnage and slaughter and the laughter of thirsting gods. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Or at least it used to be. When I joined at 40k during the end of 8th edition, I was interested into the hobby and I found out more and more people were getting into the hobby, more specifically on the lore and media, like games and videos, and memes. There was a lot of them. Most of the lore I've learned were from YouTube channels because, for me, I didn't know much about 40k other than looking for people or stuff to read like wikis and all that. Once I got into the hang of it for a while, I just moved on reading books and very slowly getting models like one by one, like very small squads of them, and before GW started to rise their price increase. After 5 years of gathered knowledge, I felt a little hollow, more so, that the lore that I took and then I thought, this is the 40k that I felt, but it felt bland, empty. And we're talking about the current, like 40k, books and all that. But I wasn't sure of why. But then the whole custodian controversy happened.
Light work, no reaction.
Ooh. Okay, it's got a little kick. Ooh.
It hit me, and I was like, wait a minute. I started backtracking a lot. First, it was the famous post in 2020 from GW and the rest of the whole fan animation incident, but most importantly, I looked at the old codexes on the lore and hearts. Sure, there's tabletop and rules, but that's not the point of this video, so I'm gonna try to stick with these two. I must say, this is the real Grimdark that I'm being looking for, and it's something that it filled me with joy, and I was like, yes, this is 40k. I must say, the peak and the bedrock of where 40k started was probably around 3rd edition and 4th edition of 40k. Personally, when it comes to the art, I like the 4th edition, and for the lore itself in the 4th edition is kinda more or less the same, but with some new nice updates added to it. But hey, it's still keeping it of what 40k is. Unfortunately, I do not have much codexes from the 5th edition all up to the 7th edition to do it justice, so I grabbed what I can from some codexes and most of the art during that period. Look, if I try to gather and find every second-hand copy or someone who's able to make a digital copy of those codexes and store it to the PC, it will take a very long time, so no thank you. If you're willing to do the job where other people cannot, then good luck, soldier. You will be remembered for your duties. Now, the question of this is, what is Grimdark? I've touched this subject a little bit in the Grimdark Worldbook video by just reading it like a fucking nerd. I'll define it for you. Grimdark is a subgenre or speculative fiction with a setting that is dystopian, immoral, and violent. Meaning that Grimdark is bleak, no meaning of hope, and it becomes dehumanizing of there are no morals of good and evil. It is a similar idea of nihilism where nothing matters at all. There's a good example. Dead Sky, Black Sun, aka The Demonculaba by Graham McNeil. If you haven't heard or read the story, I must warn you, it is quite graphic and it is not something to be taken lightly. I'm just gonna assume that most of you know what the Demonculaba is, but I'm gonna explain it regardless. Demonculaba is a form of a biological machine that is made by the Iron Warriors, so it can create like Chaos Space Marines for this next upcoming Black Crusade. That's what it is to say in the safe for work terms. In the setting of 40k, it makes sense. Because Iron Warriors, regardless of what you think, they are the biggest assholes you will ever meet, and they will just do anything to achieve their goals. Your human life means nothing compared to Space Marines, as you are seen as cannon fodder for the greater means. Nothing more, nothing less. If they have to shove you in a fucking blender to make you like a meat cube, so be it. You're worthless. I do understand that some people find it distasteful and it's edgy for the sake of edgy, but that's the point. The point of Grimdark is to have this setting to be so messed up, which makes you think of, fuck that, I'm not going there, kind of feel. Same thing with creepypastas. If it's done well, they are intended to make you feel uneasy and scared. It's a way to get the intended reaction for a specific genre to make you feel a certain way. It's not so much of, oh well, it makes me feel like this and now I'm comfortable with it and it should be less of that or it should be changed. No, that's the intention of it on a specific genre, then it should stay like that. If you don't like it, then there's always other things you can enjoy. Another example which is very interesting, I could say, is one of my favorite short stories is The Ambush of Naxos. Naxos is a planet that gets regularly raided from Dark Eldar. Once a Space Marine chapter called the Iron Snakes came along and set a trap for the Dark Eldar, it just gave them massive casualties to the enemy. But it came at the cost of the Imperial Army and other humans being used as cannon fodder. It's not as heavy as the Dumonki Laba, but the idea of humans are just being used as nothing more than tools for the greater good, that's the whole idea of it. I could list many other things, but it will just overwhelm of the point that I'm trying to make in this video. Now, understanding the Grimdark definition and how it's meant to be portrayed, so when did 40k lose its Grimdark setting? Well, let's ask our good old friend called 8th edition, the start of the Primaris Marines. Technically, I got into 40k at the end of 8th edition, but you could say I started navigating 8th edition almost after the middle of it, if that makes sense. I say this because I remember a lot of people are not happy with this change, and for a good reason. The introduction of the Primaris Marines were more of out of nowhere. Somehow they appear. Somehow we have the scientist called Belisarius Cole who is smart, somehow, and lived for 10,000 years that somehow was able to keep in secret with 100,000 Primaris Marines in his backyard in Mars with no one noticing in whatsoever. Oh yeah, also somehow Gilliman returned with Eldar magic. They appeared once and they never, ever mentioned it again! Somehow the Emperor returned. Overall, it was an unwelcoming introduction of the series which grated most of the fans, and to say some fans got used to it, I wouldn't say so. It's more so that they had to follow the train because that's where the wind was blowing. It could be also the sucking cost fallacy, which is also plausible. Most likely scenario, it was more that GW wants to bring in new people in and get rid of the old fans, as they are now unwelcomed and they will not be missed. This edition alone was able to nosedive the IP harder than Kratos from God of War 1. Then, later on, they were adding more media-related stuff for their next editions, which some of them are okay. At that point, 40k on one hand got very popular, although it came at the cost of removing of what 40k was meant to be. Grimdark. Where do we even start with the art style of 8th edition, 9th edition, and 10th edition? Like, should we talk about how Black Templars just took Primaris and allowed Psychers in their ranks like it's not even a problem? Should we even talk about the most secretive and the chapter that keeps the cards close to their chest, called Dark Angels, would just accept Primaris out of thin air? Huh? Oh boy, where do I even start with certain characters that needed to die to add that extra drama and interesting story, but instead they kept like just figureheads to sell more models. That's it. As much as I would like to rant about it, but I'll keep it on another video at some point. How did 40k lose its Grimdark? Well, it's pretty simple. It's the art, the lore, and the third-party brands that have related to 40k as official 40k branding. Sure, some of them are cool, but still, it doesn't hit as much as the old 40k. Another reason I could say is the current climate of today, where every new game and media try to make a certain small market into a big thing, which is not working. Or worse, they're trying to change everything that the IP is not. A good example that I watched recently about gaming is from NT Pans Gaming. In a couple of his videos, he talks about how in the past it was different times where certain games had a passion and they had fun elements in the games, and each category in the games had their own thing. Plus, the games were experimental, which gave interesting games their own ideas and then just have their little funny quirky things. Or, they could be popular and just popped out of nowhere. And then we just have that long duration of each popular game becomes a thing for the last, 7 years, for example. Over time, though, the newer the games come out, they either change so much that is not what the original game was, and most of them are just bland, boring, safe, and everything has to be gay.
Does anybody else feel like masculinity has slowly been drained from modern video games? If you want to see the seismic shift away from masculine characters, honestly, all you need to do is play a few games from 2006, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Almost all of these franchises have either been killed off, turned into multiplayer games, or went woke. I often wonder why so few modern games appeal to me, and I think another big reason is this: everything is just so gay now. Compare the games I just mentioned to the modern trash we have to deal with in Overwatch and Apex. Almost every character in these new games is either gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans, or something else. What happened to a masculine dude with a hot chick on his arm? If you want my 100% real thoughts on this, I just think the entire video game industry has gone woke and gay, and almost nothing they are making appeals to me in any way anymore. So this is why I mostly play 20-year-old games on my channel, because they were just better.
Same goes with 40K. Right now, it's just bland, safe, and they just pump out of what 40K made great and just piggy bank it all the way, because they just can't make good stuff anymore. Additionally, they want to push this idea, this agenda, this thing that they wanted to add like LGBTQ representation into the hobby. Why? 40K was never about the whole buzzwords like inclusivity and diversity. The 40K, it was about humanity against the whole galaxy that no one gives a shit about of what you preach. I'm gonna pray to the God Emperor and I'll hit my sixes to kill this fucking Chaos Rhino with my bayonet, then to worry whatever this is. And also, you could say the cooking shows, because if you look at the old stuff, there was a bit more passion, there was a bit more fun elements added into it, which was crazy, you could say, or you could just taste it, if that makes sense. You can see that this was taken care of and it had more passion and it took a lot more care of. If you see now, it's just, they don't give a shit, it's bland, they don't care, there's no passion, they just do it for the sake of doing it and then want to move on to the next project. That's it. This is a problem that I have for a while as I'm making this video. How do I explain to someone who hasn't seen or experienced the older stuff to understand of what they think is the top notch, which in reality, it's not? All I can say is look at the old stuff and make a comparison with the new stuff. Of course, ask yourself this: what are you expecting from this? Is this the original creators of 40K wanted to make? What is Grimdark? And the other things you should ask for yourself about the hobby that you're into. For me, my answer is pretty simple. Warhammer 40,000, when it comes to the lore, was a grimdark future where humanity is united under the faith of the God Emperor as the only light beacon against the dark. Without faith, there will be no humanity, as they fight against all kinds of aliens and heretics alike at all fronts. There's no room for doubt when all you are depending on is on survival of the human race and the man on top called the God Emperor. Pretty simple. Something should remain a mystery because that's what creates discussion, that's what creates interesting story if done well. But now, everything has to be explained to you and there is no level of mystery. Then the stories just become boring and all of that. Dark Age of Technology? What's that? Well, that's already being shown a lot in between the Necrons and Mechanicus. It's cool, but it removes the value of how powerful and the massive mystery of the Dark Age technology of humanity was. I prefer if they were rare, and the rarer they are, the more powerful it becomes, and the more flavorful it becomes. And most likely in the future books, they will show even more of it, because why not? It's not like they care about proper story anyways. Primaris having a low chance of survival when you have a Space Marine is out of the roof, since now everyone's a Primaris Marine now. Great, cool, No intention on that whatsoever. No seeing the difference between Primaris and what a Space Marine is, the veteran and the newbie. And since everybody is out and becoming a Primaris to sell models and all that, so, it doesn't really matter at this point. It just makes me just quit. Because what is it? Oh yeah, this guy? Oh yeah, he's gonna be Primaris. Cool, alright, fine. Why did 40k lose its Grimdark? Why does this matter whatsoever? I will say for one, when 40k grew popularity, and when it grew popularity, you have new people coming into the hobby with no proper understanding of 40k because they just watched some random VTuber who might have the knowledge of the old lore, but most likely the knowledge was from between 6th or 7th edition when they did some changes, for example. Or they just read a simplified wiki article, or worse, memes, and think they have all the fundamental knowledge or the concept of the lore, just basing of it. They know, what the lore is, what the Grimdark of the art is, and the setting of 40k as well, but that's not the case. Well, then again, you have TikToks, which is even worse, but you do you. Why does this matter? Well, if you have a certain expectation in the lore or the setting that contradicts your thinking, or you just don't like it, you want it changed. You want it to serve for your own means. If you change 40k as it is and then change it to something different, then it's not 40k anymore, is it? If 40k has now hope and heroes to be the light of the beacon in the darkness, and then suddenly Primarchs come back to save the Imperium, and then humanity is advancing its technology forward and revealing a lot of mysteries that should have stayed as a mystery. That's not 40k anymore. That's just Star Wars. You've changed the whole thing that the IP isn't. This and this don't look the same. They are not the same. And the new one does not reflect what the old one presented. This is one way I can explain. You have dark chocolate. You've been eating dark chocolate for over the years, and you know it's dark chocolate from the taste and the texture. Now, if someone adds milk into the dark chocolate, and now this is called the dark chocolate, well, it's no longer dark chocolate, isn't it? The more you add milk, the less dark the chocolate becomes. You can argue, well, the lore supports and shows that the lore side still holds its Grimdark and its setting in 40k. Yes and no. Yes, as in you're reading the old lore but just repainted in a different way, and most likely you gotta have nostalgia bait just like in the art since they can't make their own good things at this point. And no, you need other pieces of the setting because the art will reflect the lore and the lore will reflect back to the art. Let's say if you have something Grimdark in the story, the lore, but suddenly you just have cute art that is its cover art of the book. Well, they don't really connect well with each other, do they? Also, to still stand and bring reasons of why 40k is still Grimdark even now in 10th edition for XYZ reason, which I would disagree, as I brought up many examples from the art style and the lore alone. Be honest with yourself, have you checked the old art or read the old lore stuff and compare it to the new current ones? Not watching YouTube videos, not what some dude said on Reddit, I mean directly, you, yourself, looking at these stuff and making your own judgment, then trying to get confirmation bias from people on specific platforms. You can still have a civil disagreement with me of what I present in this video, and that's fine. I will still get you a beer, King, and we'll still be friends. Another reason as to why it's lost its Grimdark is almost simple, where Games Workshop wanted to expand its brand, but also they had to lose its detail of what matched in the setting. That showed well in 8th edition with certain branding they presented to you, and do you think, let's say they want to expand even more if the show of 40k was successful, they would maintain of what they have now? No. They will sanitize it even more, it will be even more bland to appease a certain audience so they can buy its models or other media products they show. But also, not so many people call it out or just push it back on this thing. So instead, they just shrug it off like, oh, well, Games Workshop doing Games Workshop things, and they get away with it. Then again, the whole theme of Custodes was a different story, but that's only one example out of the many stuff what they have done in the last 5 years that I've been around. Price rise for the 3rd time out of the last 3 years consistently. Oh well, I guess that's how it is. Fan animation being hammered down? Oh well, it sucks, but I guess that's how it is. famous post from Games Workshop of what they said exactly what they're going to do and what they were going to do, and if you don't like it, you will not be missed. Ah well, I guess that's what it is. We might as well follow the train. Downgrading the art? Well, it's a mix, but mainly it's like, well, I don't like this, but, that's how it is. It's Games Workshop. Anything with a 40k sticker from games, from models, or anything else, they'll be like, wow, Games Workshop back at it again with its amazing models and improving effect, and I'll buy it with its fullest if it needs to be. Fence sitting on a topic can get you places to avoid. But once the problem is directly in front of your house and still fence sitting, I think it's a bit silly. So sometimes, some harsh criticism is needed because you want it to be better, to do things better so they can convince you to buy their product. When you point out and don't like it, call it out. Not only that, your actions will speak and they'll follow up to your words because that matters. If you say one thing and you do completely the opposite with your actions, then that doesn't support it well. You can blame Games Workshop for what they're doing or pushing for, but in the end, who's the one responsible or promoting that behavior or allowing it to make those decisions that Games Workshop can get away with? It's the whales. The ones who have a lot of money onto them and they just spend it a lot because they can. Mainly, it's the customers who don't know any better, which I'm sorry for your loss. For the customer to buy the stuff since they don't know any other alternatives of what they can get. That's fine, that's fair, but still, it's better to let them know for those alternatives. Unless you knew the alternatives, but instead you think Games Workshop models are the only way, well, look, I'm gonna be harsh on this one. You're getting scammed, or you're lying to yourself that Games Workshop is better than what anyone else makes. You could either 3D print or have someone 3D print for you in a cheaper price and having cooler models. Not even that, probably even more models out of it. Will it kill the company? No, let's be real. They have too much money in their pocket as a company. I don't think they will go down just because 3D printer go brr. That's not gonna work. But will that benefit you? Absolutely. If you do things correctly of what you're trying to achieve, then not only you'll have a skill set in 3D printing or knowing who to get from 3D models from, you will get more models out and less money in. Where Games Workshop, they have the entire monopoly, which is the opposite of it, which is more money and less models. So which one is it? Do you want more models or do you want to spend more money for a commodity that you probably won't even play it on tabletop? Another thing that I see often is to gatekeep their IPs. But I'll have to set my foot on this one. How can you really gatekeep an IP like 40k or other related sci-fis and fantasies when the big bosses at the top are just allowing it? They are the ones who are calling the shots and they just open the door and then allowing all these audiences that come into their hobby. I don't think there's a thing to gatekeep, especially such as IPs like these. The only way to gatekeep things is to either have an IP to be very niche, or even better, you personally have your own IP where you are able to, dictate of what it is allowed or not. That's all I can think of, really. If you really want to gatekeep something, it has to be something that you're able to have control of it and, something that's really worth of your time. As much there are interesting things with the current 40k, the art is not reflecting well of what the lore provides and the setting. Art is an important part of the piece of puzzle because you need all the parts to make a complete set. If you have nothing, then the other parts can only do so much before they fall over. 40k overall, with its mystery, which enriches the lore and having such detail and passion of the setting that it showed how Grimdark in a proper manner. But now, what else is to say to round it up and say the current 40k? It's just shit. That is why I personally stopped getting GW models, plastic models and all that, because at this point, I'll be moving slowly to 3D printing, or have someone else 3D print for me, and most likely I'll get more models out of it and just pay less. Not only that, I'm looking for alternative IPs that might have the same feel or something even better than the current 40k is. Good example, I tried Grimdark Future. They had interesting tabletop, but their lore and art didn't stand of what I was expecting when reading the world book. Will it be ever possible for 40k to return to its roots of what mattered the most? Nah. They will continue on the path of selling models, which brings them a lot of money, and they will continue to do so. Maybe at some point when they go down, it's probably going to be too late for them, and they're already burning their own IP as it is, so it's already dead, and let the IP burn. Overall, I'm here to point out the issue of what you thought 40k is not what it used to be, based on the stuff I've showed you in this video. This is where I'll end the video for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye, my brothers, and take care.